Farming has been at the heart of our lives for generations. But to the climate change advocates, suddenly it's a threat.
A lot of people have no clue that agriculture contributes about 33% of all the emissions of the world. You just can't continue to both warm the planet while also expecting to feed it. Doesn't work.
One thing John Kerry didn't mention was that farming and agriculture contributes 100% of the food that we need to eat. So that's a little kind of an important detail that he ought to have mentioned. And I think what we're dealing with here is actually a global war on agriculture. I believe they are demolishing our food infrastructure, partly to cause a crisis, right? And I guarantee you, mark my words, we're going to be in a food crisis and they're going to say it's climate change.
I wouldn't say it's about saving the planet, no. I would say it's about land grab and about profiteering and corporatization of our food sector.
It's basically a pharmaceutical industry taking over the food supply. If I can switch everybody from real food to pharma food, then 100% of the agriculture industry can go through my publicly traded stocks, and I have complete control. So the idea is we get rid of farmers, we kill any naturally grown food, and we engineer food in manufacturing plants and laboratories. But I assure you that those guys are not eating this.
Bill Gates is one of the familiar corporate faces, and he's investing heavily in the food revolution under the guise of avoiding climate disaster.
Cows alone account for about 6% of global emissions. So we need to change cows.
And while he talks up the perceived problem, Gates is pouring money into the supposed solution: artificial meat and genetically modified crops. Crucially, anything that is invented or altered can be patented.
The core of his agenda is he wants to do in agriculture and pharmaceuticals, by the way, what he did in the computer world. True power, massive, incalculable wealth comes from owning intellectual property and then monopolizing it. They want to make it so that every single organism that is used for food is ultimately under their control, either through the 3D printing or through this genetic manipulation. So we're moving now very rapidly toward this totally centralized food system where a tiny handful of corporate interests in bed with totalitarian government will dominate the food supply so that there is only a giant public-private partnership with total control of all food, all energy, and I believe water will be next.
While the global machinations continue, thousands of farmers fear for their livelihoods. And the new UK government's first budget has multiplied those fears. By reducing relief on inheritance tax, they're penalising those who would want to pass their farms to sons or daughters. The National Farmers Union described it as
a disastrous budget
for family farms that would
snatch away the next generation's ability to carry on producing British food and see farmers forced to sell land to pay the tax.
For Kelly Seaton, concern goes well beyond her family farm in Cheshire.
It makes me feel incredibly sad that the dairy and meat industry is so vilified. You will never find anything as nutritionally complete as milk and meat. The food that is going to replace milk, meat, and all of the other products that we produce in this country is going to be very nutritionally lacking. They will starve us from nutrients, and then the pharmaceutical companies will probably pick up the slack on that, all of which create a profiteering circle.
No Farmers, No Food was set up to campaign against untenable net zero and climate change policies. Farmers, says Kelly, are being dealt a deeply unfair hand.
When cows are blamed for climate change, it does make you question everything. And I think this is where a lot of farmers are waking up to the fact that there's a lot of lies being told to us. The problem with the current carbon system is that a lot of big corporations are offsetting their carbon. So most dairy producers now especially, but other farmers as well, are having to record their carbon footprint on systems that aren't fit for purpose. They are woo-woo figures pulled from the sky, quite frankly, and then the big corporations are using that data to offset their carbon so that they can look better. again, at the same time as beating us with a stick and saying that we're the ones killing the planet with these girls.
The methane emitted by cows' digestive system is part of the argument against them, but Kelly says that's just hot air.
The grass that they eat would produce the same amount of methane whether they ate it or not. Okay, they do speed that up, but the other thing they give us is this, muck, which we put on the fields to fertilise the fields and reduces our reliance on buying in fertiliser.
200 miles to the south, Ed Rhodes farms 188 acres of Devon countryside. He's not part of the No Farmers, No Food movement, but agrees that the whole narrative on cows and climate change is wrong.
As farmers, we recycle carbon all the time. That's what we do. You could almost define farmers as carbon recyclers. We're an organic beef, sheep and vegetable farm. We run a fairly traditional system of rotational farming. We'll have a field which would be growing a brassica crop for 1 year, a non-brassica crop for another year, such as broad beans or sweet corn, and then we have a break for that field, so it goes into a predominantly grass and clover mix. That allows the soil to recover from the work that we've done with it while we've had the vegetables growing. It also allows things like the clover to put nitrogen back into the soil. So the livestock are absolutely essential for grazing that grassland. We also mow it so that the hay, the silage that we take from those fields are fed to the cattle in the winter. The bale I'm sitting on, the bedding that they're standing on, is all mown from very rushy areas on our farm. The animals then dung onto that. We compost that. That gets spread onto the land primarily where we're growing the vegetables to put the fertility in, and that's what then produces our crops. If you remove livestock from the system, you have no system.
Farmers like Ed Rhodes work with knowledge and passion, but still have to comply with a labyrinth of government rules and regulations, including carbon monitoring. And now land itself is under threat. Corporations such as British Airways are buying farms to plant trees for carbon offsets, while other areas are being declared sites of special scientific interest, restricting or even preventing use for crops and livestock. And then there's the United Nations SDGs.
Goal 15. Protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems.
Consequently, rewilding programmes are impacting farmland across the world. In the UK, for example, the government is planning to set apart 1,200 square miles for wildlife habitat by 2042. That's an area almost as large as Cornwall. And in America, dams are being removed and river courses reopened, disrupting water supplies for crops. Goal 13 states,
Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts.
As a result, the Dutch government plans to close 3,000 farms to meet EU emissions targets, drawing widespread protests. And in Denmark, farmers face paying £80 for every cow they own in a world-first tax on meat.
Goal 7. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all.
One result: cultivated land is disappearing under vast solar parks. How does this square with the UN's biodiversity goals or even ending hunger? Maybe they're questions for Ed Miliband, the UK's Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. He's cleared the way for a huge solar park on prime farmland in East Anglia, an area big enough to site 1,745 football pitches.
It's a crime to take food productive land out for solar panels, which are unrecyclable, potentially not that productive going forward, and not feed the planet. It is absolutely catastrophic. We've gone from being 78% self-sufficient in 1984 to now less than 60% self-sufficient. I think it's about 54%, which I think is set to fall even further this year.
On top of all that, British farmers are being paid not to produce food under schemes like the Sustainable Farming Incentive. Kelly Seaton understands that many farmers accept the money to balance their books, but has this warning.
When you look at how many farms are selling up, how many arable farms are struggling, we're walking into food shortages, and I think we're going to end up eating more processed food, maybe lab-grown meat, and I think that's part of the plan.
The squeeze on farming is self-evident. Our supply of natural food is under very real threat, just as the WEF predicted. Worse than that, Catherine Austin Fitts says that with programmable currency, you wouldn't have a choice.
No one in their right mind would ever eat this stuff. But the reality is, once they have control of your transactions, they can dictate what food you can and cannot buy. If they want you to buy pizza made with insect-based flour, that's what you're going to get.
There's an energy crisis. Even though there is an abundance of energy, there's a food crisis, even though there's plenty of food to feed the world. There's a water crisis, even though 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with it. There's an air crisis where CO2 is declared the enemy of mankind, even though it's necessary for life to exist on Earth. There's a resource crisis, even though there are abundant resources to support everyone. What's with us here, you know? Who created all these crises? They did it. Just as clear as the nose on my face. It's all been a sham. All the essential things of life, they've been declared to be scarce, because things that are scarce you can control.
The architects of such globalist trajectories, all the Kissingers, Rockefellers, Schwabs, Carneys, Strongs, Carstens, are held out as great intellects, but they are nothing of the sort. We know, both in theory and in practice, that centralization causes nothing but misery because it destroys the mechanisms of error correction, leading to doubling down on flawed policies.
And yet the creed of global dominance continues apace. Through the WHO's so-called pandemic agreement, its One Health initiative, and ultimately the United Nations Agenda 2030. From medical diktats to gender and racial politics to climate change, the indoctrination runs deep. Local councils have been sucked in by the tentacles of global power, encouraging them to spend vast amounts of time and taxpayers' money on climate schemes, without challenging the rationale.
Local councils have taken these actions because they are part of or lobbied by a network of green organisations throughout the United Kingdom. For example, UK 100, there's also C40 cities, and there's the Global Covenant of Mayors. And these organisations require local authorities to sign pledges that say they're going to ban cars from streets, we're going to make people vegetarian, and we're going to restrict certain forms of trade faster than is required by national government. They've been able to do this because democratic engagement at the local level is so weak. The voters' decisions are completely outweighed by the influence of the green blob, essentially.
One organisation, Climate Emergency UK, has introduced scorecards, a league table to compare the progress of councils. It brings both pressure and opportunity.
Environmentalism creates the idea that a local councillor is a planet saver. And of course, there are organisations that, like the UK 100, that are going to flatter people in that position. They're going to indulge those people and say how important they are, whereas most of the rest of the public are going to probably see them and say, what the hell are you doing?
Ben Pyle emphasises that such organisations are not grassroots initiatives.
Civil society has been bought and it's been organised around the interests of its billionaire philanthropists.
Newspapers and television also consistently push the same story.
We've been hearing about the threat of climate change for decades, but now we can't ignore it.
Here, the climate crisis is very real, and it is getting worse. what mainstream media does in following this narrative is that they exclude vast areas of climate science. They exclude all the skeptical scientists. By the BBC, which has done it for 20 years, saying that you cannot have any other view apart from the settled narrative, is doing an enormous disservice to science.
Journalists and broadcasters are schooled in the carbon doctrine by organisations such as the Carbon Literacy Project, which claims to have trained 1,000 BBC employees. Meanwhile, Sky joined forces with the psychologists of the Behavioural Insights team to produce this initiative: How the Power of Television Can Nudge Viewers to Decarbonise Their Lifestyles. The recommendations included:
give green content more screen time, more salience in plots and scenes. Use kids' content to encourage positive environmental behaviours amongst children and their parents.
How then can we possibly expect impartiality in reporting? Rather, we're served with propaganda, statements that nobody seems willing or able to question.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
I can take current media and almost any climate story I can write, I think, a very effective counter. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. This is endemic to a media that is ill-informed and has an agenda. The agenda is to promote alarm and induce governments to decarbonize. There's an organization called Covering Climate Now, which is a nonprofit membership organization. Their mission is to promote the narrative. They will not allow anything to be broadcast or written that is counter to the narrative.
Among the 500 plus media partners on the Covering Climate Now website are Reuters, Bloomberg, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, NBC, Channel 4 News, The Guardian, The Daily Mirror and The Lancet, as well as several British universities. Funders of Covering Climate Now have included the Rockefeller Family Fund, the Rockefeller Family and Associates, and the One Earth Fund.
It's true that the mainstream media only report one side of the story and that most of them are in the pockets of the powerful people who are trying to implement these changes. I don't question that at all. But it's also true that people are listening to them less and less and reading them less and less. We see independent media people with much larger audiences than mainstream papers. And I think that phenomenon will gather pace now.
That rise in independent voices has seen institutions like the UN, the WEF, big tech companies and broadcasters like the BBC wage war on what they call mis, dis and malinformation. They don't appreciate views they can't control.
The fight for truth is on.
A partisan media, obsessed local councils, and then there are the universities, which should be the first and last bastions of objective research and open debate. But here too is a story of outside pressure.
With the drop in government funding, the shortfall has been made up from other sources, and those tend to be NGOs, private organisations. For example, the Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. Invariably, money from private organisations will come with vested interests.
These vested interests, according to Professor Moss, drive university teaching towards business goals and ideologies at the expense of critical thinking and levels of academic achievement. One new initiative is the European Network on Climate and Health Education, led by Glasgow University. Medical students have been trained to accept that climate science is an established fact.
Increasingly, climate change is harming people's health. You could say it's the largest health emergency of our time, and I do need to be ready to help tackle this challenge.
Can the outcomes really be free of prejudice when the backers include the WHO and major pharmaceutical companies?
This new collaboration will help train the next generation of medics with the skills they need to treat the health impacts of climate change and deliver more sustainable healthcare.
That's why health leaders from across the public and private sectors are coming together to support this transformative new network.
Academics, right from the beginning now, are socialised to orientate their research towards the money. So this, I think, is quite damaging when it comes to fearlessly pursuing the truth wherever it may lead. That doesn't really happen anymore in academia. It's more about pursuing the money wherever that might lead.
It makes me feel distraught. It makes me feel that the whole purpose of university learning has been subverted.
The influence and ambition of big business, the mission creep of so-called woke thinking, the cancel culture, the suppression and smearing of those who dare to question. Shockingly, the conditioning starts in the youngest of minds.
All aboard for global goals!
This year, Thomas and his friends have teamed up with the United Nations.
The world of young children is supposed to be one of innocence and joy, but it's been permeated by the global ideologies of the United Nations.
If you go to goal number 4, it deals exclusively with education. And when you think education, recognize they're talking about indoctrination.
The Sustainable Development Goals.
Under the surface of it all is this effort to bring all the children of the world into this one world globalist system. And what's so remarkable about this to me is that it's not even hidden anymore.
Take part in the global movement
to save our world from being destroyed.
How will you fight climate change?
Try meat-free meals. Reduce your electricity use. Give your clothes a second chance.
We died! It's kind of your fault!
And you can never ignore Greta.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic.
We want action. We want justice. Let's want action.
And we want it now!
No more coal! No more oil! Keep your...
I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is.
This propaganda relentlessly promoting fear in various ways, be it disease, be it climate, I think is having a very damaging impact on young people's mental health.
The disasters that continue increasingly to afflict the natural world have one element that connects them all: the unprecedented increase in the number of human beings on the planet.
We're asking children to believe they are a scourge on the planet. I have a problem with children believing they shouldn't be here from the off. How are we ever going to encourage them to have strong mental health and emotional well-being if they believe that their birth is a disaster for the planet? That's not encouraging them to be productive citizens who are making an active contribution to society if they've got to apologise for their very existence. I think it's very dangerous, and I think we need to reverse that as soon as possible.
The indoctrination of children is further evidenced across their learning. Objectivity and freedom of thought are being stifled by the persistent pushing of agendas.
I undertook a study of secondary school textbooks to see what children are being taught. And what I found was extremely shocking. I found unqualified acceptance of climate change, the wonders of vaccines, GM foods, and very few counter-arguments were presented. If you cannot produce this information that's in the textbooks, you cannot succeed in the school system. If a student undertaking a geography exam, for example, doesn't talk about man-made climate change, then they're very unlikely to hit the top marks. Is it not surprising that the phrase critical thinking actually only occurs in relation to two subjects? One is art and design, and the other is history. Other than that, it's completely absent from the national curriculum. If we have a dumbed-down syllabus, we're actually stunting children's brain capacity and brain potential.
While parents may not be fully aware of these issues, many are concerned at the growing trend of gender politics, including transgendering. One former head teacher says his local authority advised teachers not to use the words boy or girl for fear of misgendering anyone.
The Department for Education as well has really subscribed to this kind of woke ideology. So there's almost like brownie points for the more woke you can be.
Why do you have makeup and lipstick and glitter on?
Because I think it looks pretty. You don't think it looks pretty?
What schools have done is employ third-party agencies to deliver material for which the third parties most certainly have a vested interest in. And I wouldn't have a problem if it was I'm there in school to ask children to accept me as I am. That's fine. We all need to be tolerant and liberal in a diverse society. My problem is that what they're actually doing is more a form of evangelism, which is this is who I am and you might be too.
In my heart, I've always known that I'm a girl Teddy, not a boy Teddy. I wish my name was Tilly, not Thomas.
Language carries so many meanings and messages. And if schools are encouraging social transitioning, that's not a neutral act. That's a significantly impactful act.
Dr. Fraser is also highly critical of the World Health Organization's recommendations, suggesting that 4-year-olds should learn about sexual stimulation.
It's harmful. They don't need to know it. And in fact, for those children who are perhaps victims of adult abusers, how will they ever know the difference between what is happening within the home if they're encouraged to also explore that part of themselves within a school curriculum? What do we do with an organisation like the United Nations or the World Health Organization if we take our orders from them about what is suitable education for our child? How do we say, no, we're not doing that, we want a change?
Teachers are sent on courses to embrace the diversity dogmas, and many buy into them. But Fairclough says that those who don't keep quiet for fear of reprisals.
It's a dereliction of duty. It's a dereliction of their legal as well as their moral duty to safeguard children against harm.
I can certainly say I feel very let down by the teaching profession because I am not hearing people speaking out on behalf of the children.
A one-world dictatorial education, a dumbing down in the classroom, fluidity of gender, the impact of technology. Are our children being groomed for a life in the digital prison?
Today, nobody has any idea what to teach young people that will still be relevant in 20 years. As computers become better and better in more and more fields, there is a distinct possibility that computers will outperform us in most tasks and will make humans redundant. And then the big political and economic question of the 21st century will be, what do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for?
Do you have an answer in the book?
At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games. But this doesn't sound like a very appealing future.
A chilling forecast, and one which echoes Brave New World, in which the oligarchs did indeed provide drugs and entertainment so that people learned to love their enslavement. Yet there are even darker clouds on the horizon, the spectre of transhumanism.
In a sense, it is that final piece of the puzzle. If you want to gain total control over everyone and everything, then you actually ultimately need to be able to implant technologies inside human bodies. And that's exactly what's taking place.
artificial intelligence, the metaverse, near space technologies, and I could go on and on, synthetic biology. Our life in 10 years from now will be completely different, very much affected, and who masters those technologies in some way will be the master of the world.
These modern technocrats seem wedded to science and technology at the expense of our human spirit and ingenuity. They aspire to a data-driven world which is robotic and predictable in every sense, with no room for creativity or individual choice. But if the goal is, and always was, population reduction, maybe they're right on track.
We feel too afraid to have kids because we feel that we're heading towards civilization breakdown.
People under the age of 35 are more likely to report climate change as a reason not to have children.
I've decided not to have kids to do my part for climate change.
If I don't think the future is worth anything, then I'm not going to have children. If I think it is worth something, I will have children.
I think these ideas have spread like bad viruses, and there's been a lot of investment in promoting some extraordinarily weak ideas. Sitting at the top of all of these very bad ideas is one giant one, which we can call anti-humanism. Transhumanism, the trans phenomenon, net zero, lockdowns, population reduction, all of these ideas are basically the ugly stepchildren of anti-humanism. They are, as I read it, essentially two competing ideas in the world at the moment. One is that humans are the best feature of the observable universe, the only creatures capable of creative thought and generativity and of creating explanations for how reality works, that humans ought to be revered and ought to be cherished, that we should plan for their flourishing, that we should be planning for the flourishing of as many people as possible, that human agency ought to be respected, that civil liberties ought to be respected, and that the imposition of top-down, one-size-fits-all policies on humanity is completely incompatible with that kind of worldview. Set up against them are people who regard humans as the scum on the surface of the little blue dot, people who regard humanity as some kind of blight, people who believe that the earth needs rights to protect it from these horrible humans. And I think it is a deeply sad reflection of the state of our societies that so many people live in the latter camp, but I'm definitely not one of them.
We can all stand up to tyranny. We can and must fight for the things that truly matter. The people we love, the fairness we'd like to see, and the personal freedoms we'd like to experience. We should not be bullied, nor should we accept the influences of those who would split our society, be it by race, by gender, by culture, or anything else we hold dear. And perhaps we should start by limiting our reliance on technology and remembering how creative we can be.
Over time, more and more people are starting to see this now. The powers that be have no choice but to keep pushing forward